white claw. I can't stop. Fuck around, make my 40 pop.
You know, there's some episodes where I ask myself, do you guys really need me to talk about this episode? Because I ain't gonna lie to you guys, this episode right here was arguably the best episode of Boruto thus far. Absolutely insane. I knew this episode was gonna be on a completely different type of timing. As soon as I opened the actual episode, it looked completely different from everything else we've ever really seen from the Boruto anime. But I think this animation style is a lot better in terms of animation because it kind of tones down the art style. It gives the animators a whole lot of freedom to do exactly what they want to do. For example, just this scene right here, like this right here was completely unnecessary. Not only that, I knew the animators were in their bag right when I seen Delta kind of flick her head back. That right there was also super unnecessary. Now the fight itself was absolutely insane. Coming to this episode, we had a lot of high expectations for this fight, and the Boruto anime, if not met, basically exceeded our expectations. I'm already seeing some hot takes on Twitter where people are actually saying that this episode is better than episode 65. If you guys aren't necessarily aware what the episode was, it was the episode where Naruto and Sasuke fought against final form Momoshiki. Now I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I wouldn't necessarily put it all the way up there, but it's right there. I mean, like, if not neck and neck, just a tiny bit below that. As far as the adaptation, it basically followed everything that we did see in the Boruto manga, but the anime added a whole lot of brand new things. The choreographers pretty much stepped up tenfold. One of the things that the anime made obvious is that a lot of what Kawaki does is centered around his cell multiplication. Now I do want to point out that's obviously not the exact name of it. I want Kawaki in the next episode potentially to actually tell us what exactly he's doing, and we could potentially form an actual name of that. So right now I'm calling it the cell multiplication. One of the things that I do want to point out, Kawaki didn't necessarily use chakra in this episode until he actually did activate his karma steel, and again I'm still not even sure if that right there is actually chakra. Garo, on the other hand, is a very interesting character. In terms of his character, a lot of people do like to compare and contrast him with Ao and actually talk about if he's actually stronger than Ao. In my opinion, I mean, from this episode, even though he did lose, I think he's actually stronger than Ao. From what he did to Kawaki in his base form was absolutely insane. Now I might be blinded just because of the animation and everything made all the hits look that much harder and all the moves look that much faster. It might be that, but I don't know. From my vantage point, Garo just looks like he's not necessarily on another level, but he just looks like he's above Ao, especially understanding that Ao was pretty much inactive for almost 16 years. But at a certain point in the fight, it looks like Garo entered a new form or something like that, where he turned pink. Now I'm not necessarily sure if this is just because Garo was a little bit hot or he was just a little bit tired or something like that, but at this particular phase right here, Kawaki couldn't do anything to him. He looked like an absolute juggernaut. Kawaki put up a very good fight after Garo went to this form, and I think if Kawaki was 100%, he would have actually finished Garo during his last blow. This form of Garo right here didn't necessarily make it seem like Garo was faster than he usually was. It just seemed like his defensive prowess was heightened a little bit more, but I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I think if Kawaki was 100% during this last blow right here, Garo would have got destroyed. And that right there just shows you how good Kawaki actually is. But now towards the end of the time where Kawaki was actually in his base form, Kawaki and Boruto both activated their karma seals on the Boruto riders. Want to put emphasis on this, that their karma seals were actually resonating off of each other, hence the title of this episode, Resonance. Now not only that, multiple people talked about it as well during the episode. Kashin Koji talked about it, even Boruto and everybody else were talking about it as well, how his karma seal was activating alongside Kawaki's karma seal. I talked about this in multiple other videos. The first time that Boruto did actually activate the karma seal, we still don't necessarily know if that was Boruto activating the karma seal off of his own volition, or was that just solely because Kawaki during the time was also in the battle versus the puppets. Thus Boruto's karma seal right then and there was also resonating off of Kawaki's karma seal as well. But regardless, the karma seal in this episode took Kawaki to a completely brand new level. Now it seems like the karma seal, from what we know up until this episode right here, has 3 completely different phases. This right here was actually said by Kashin Koji. Now I'm not necessarily sure if they were talking about the karma seal having 3 different phases or just the overall vessel of Kawaki having 3 different phases, but if there are 3 different phases for the karma seal, I do want to kind of give my hypothesis on what it could potentially be. The first phase is of course when Kawaki has his hand in a diamond. The second phase is of course when the karma seal is actually activated, but it's still black all around. And the third phase is when the karma seal is actually glowing, either blue in Boruto's case or red in Kawaki's case. And I think what made it actually go to the third phase, if Kashin Koji of course was hypothetically actually talking about the karma seal, was because Kawaki absorbed so much chakra from Garo when he was pretty much panicking, just firing off a whole bunch of blasts from his scientific ninja tool. One of the things that I definitely want is like a data book, for example, to come out and tell us exactly what is the multiplier of the karma seal. For example, back in part 1 of Naruto, when Sasuke were to activate his karma seal, I think it was about a 5 times multiplier or a 10 times multiplier. I'm not necessarily sure. And back in Naruto Shippuden, when Naruto activated his Sage mode, people understood that that was equivalent to Naruto and his 5 tails transformation. I'm not necessarily sure that we're gonna get a flat out power multiplier like that for the karma seal anytime soon, but I definitely am looking out for that. But regardless, once Kawaki activated the karma seal, the fight was pretty much over. Not only because Kawaki was that much more stronger, but also because Garo was pretty much panicking. He didn't necessarily know what to do. He wasn't necessarily doing anything that he was doing before in terms of actual power positions and techniques. One of the things that I definitely want to see from this episode is a little bit more of the abilities from the karma seal. We didn't necessarily get to see that, but I'm not necessarily going to complain too much, mainly because this episode, as I said, is arguably on the level of the best episode of all time in Boruto. But the thing that the karma seal did actually do that's indisputable is absorb chakra. Not only that, boost Kawaki's ability. So for example, the cell multiplication that Kawaki always uses, I'm pretty sure that boosted that cell multiplication to like a completely different level, because when he did use it against Garo, this right here was arguably the best scene of the whole episode. He pretty much blew Garo's whole insides out. He pretty much pierced a hole directly through Garo. Now, I didn't really expect the Boruto anime to be this gruesome. I knew in the Boruto manga it was this gruesome. It wasn't necessarily this good. It wasn't this good, but it was actually this gruesome. I thought the anime would tone it a little bit down, but I'm guessing from the animation style, I should have automatically knew this episode of Boruto was going to be on a completely different level, and they 100% didn't pull any punches. And even down to the in-between of Kawaki's 2 last attacks of Garo, Garo was literally crying and begging for his life. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, in the Boruto manga, we didn't see all of this. We seen a tear fall from Garo's eyes, literally begging Kawaki for his life, and Kawaki, being the cold-hearted demon that he is, he didn't care at all and just completely blew Garo's body off his legs. Garo's legs were literally just flowing and flying in the air. Again, something that I didn't necessarily expect the animated show as well, but this right here completely took me all the way off guard. Absolutely insane fighting, and absolutely insane imagery, and of course the overall feel, OST, everything about this episode, in my opinion, was absolutely top notch. A 10 out of 10 episode. You can't really ask for anything else better. Now, in terms of Kashin, Koji, and Delta, they're potentially talking about killing everybody else in the Hidden Leaf Village and then taking Kawaki back, because of course that was the overall mission. But Kashin Koji actually talked Delta down and talked about how he wants to actually gain a little bit more intel about Kawaki and the karma seal. What I'm kind of feeling right now from the Kado organization is that in terms of information regarding Kawaki, Jigen is a little bit secretive. Jigen doesn't necessarily like to share all of the information. Of course, I feel like as right now, this right here is pretty much a prime time for Kashin Koji to actually figure out exactly what is going on in the Kado organization, because from what we see right now, the only people that are actually in the know is going to be the scientist Amato and the leader of the Kado organization, Jigen himself. But regardless, I'm pretty sure we all know what's coming next. Boruto and everybody else, they're heading back to the Hidden Leaf Village and taking Kawaki back to Naruto, Papa Naruto himself. But one thing I do want to know is, of course, give me your favorite moment of the episode, but in my opinion, it has to be Kawaki's last 2 attacks when he completely destroyed Garo. And also, where do you guys think this episode actually stands? Do you guys think this episode is better than episode 65, or do you guys think it's a little bit below that? And even how does it stack up to episode 175 when they actually did fight against Deepa, the last fight against Deepa, when all 3 of them basically killed him? But let me know what you guys think. It's been your boy Baara B, and we out.
It's a knife.